The stars shone like tiny diamonds against the black emptiness of space. The human ship Dauntless moved slowly toward the massive alien vessel. Captain June stood tall on the bridge, his dark eyes fixed on the viewscreen. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, not turning his head. Beside him, Hannah nodded. She was the ship's diplomat, chosen for her calm mind and quick thinking. "As ready as anyone can be for humanity's first official meeting with aliens," she said. The message had come 3 weeks ago, a simple greeting from something called the Galactic Coalition. 7 alien species who had joined together to explore the stars. They had been watching humans for some time. Now they wanted to talk. "Docking in 5 minutes, Captain," said the pilot. June took a deep breath. "Remember the plan. We are friendly but careful. We share basic information only. We do not make promises." The ship shuddered slightly as it connected with the alien vessel. June and Hannah walked to the airlock, followed by 2 security officers. The door slid open with a soft hiss. On the other side stood 3 aliens. One was tall and thin with blue skin and 4 arms. Another was short and wide with scales like a reptile. The third looked almost human except for its silver eyes and white hair. "Welcome," said the almost human alien in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Gall of the Coalition. We are honored to meet Earth's representatives." June stepped forward. "Captain June of the Earth ship Dauntless *. This is Hannah, our diplomatic officer. Please follow us to the meeting room," said Gall. As they walked through the alien ship, June noticed strange, shifting shapes floating beside each alien. The shapes were like smoke but moved with purpose. Some looked vaguely like animals, others like strange geometric patterns. In the meeting room, a large table waited. 7 chairs on one side, 4 on the other. But what caught June's attention were the 7 large, transparent beings hovering behind the alien side of the table. Each one was different. One made of what looked like fire, another like flowing water, a third covered in metal armor. "Please, sit," said Gall. "Now that we are in the official chamber, we can introduce our full delegations." One by one, the aliens introduced themselves and the smoky shapes beside them. "And this is my patron deity, Zelmar, god of knowledge," Gall concluded, pointing to a transparent being with countless eyes and a body like an open book. June and Hannah exchanged confused glances. "And where are your patron deities?" asked the reptilian alien. "We are especially interested in meeting your god of war. Our war deity, Kralvex, is most eager for the exchange." It pointed to the largest of the transparent beings, a 4-armed giant with weapons covering its body and eyes that burned like stars. The massive being leaned forward, its voice booming inside June's head rather than through his ears. "Yes, where I is your war god, humans. I wish to discuss battle tactics and glory." An uncomfortable silence filled the room. June cleared his throat. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding," he said carefully. "We don't bring deities to diplomatic meetings." The aliens all tilted their heads in the same confused manner. The smoky shapes swirled more quickly. "You misunderstand," said Gall. "We're not asking why you didn't bring your gods. We're asking which of your gods watches over your wars and battles. All species have one. It is universal." Hannah looked at June, her eyes warning him to be careful with his answer. "We don't have one," June said simply. "Not anymore." The room went completely silent. The smoky shapes stopped moving. The transparent beings seemed to grow larger. "What happened to your war god?" asked Gall, voice barely above a whisper. June looked directly at Kralvex, the massive war deity. "We killed it," he said. "It was too soft." 3 days after the first meeting, the United Nations Security Council gathered in New York. The room was tense. Around the large round table sat the most powerful leaders on Earth. At the center of attention were the 3 coalition representatives and their smoky deity companions. General Taz stood at the front of the room. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Beside him stood Dr. Yun, a small woman whose knowledge of ancient history made her the world's leading expert on forgotten religions. "We understand you have questions about our gods," General Ta said. His voice was deep and calm. "Specifically about our war god." Ambassador Gall nodded. The smoky shape of Zelmar, the knowledge god, swirled around him. "Yes, in all our travels, we have never met a species without patron deities. It is disturbing, especially the absence of a war god," added the reptilian alien. Behind it, Kralvex loomed larger than before, its 4 arms crossed over its chest of battle armor. "War is a sacred art that requires divine guidance." Dr. Yun stepped forward. "Perhaps I can explain. Humans once had many gods. Different cultures had different names for them. The Greeks called their war god Ares. The Romans called him Mars. In Japan, he was Hachiman." The aliens relaxed slightly. Gall smiled. "Ah, so you do have war deities. They just have different names in different regions." "Had," Dr. Yun corrected. "We had these gods." "You speak as if these were merely cultural myths," Gall said. "But surely you understand that patron deities are real beings, like our companions here." He gestured to the transparent entities floating around the room. Dr. Yun looked at General Ta, who nodded for her to continue. "We know they were real," she said. "They walked among us once. They were powerful beings who demanded worship and sacrifice. They guided human affairs for thousands of years." The coalition representatives seemed relieved. "Then you do understand," said Gall. "But where are they now? Why don't they join you at important meetings?" The room went quiet. The human leaders looked at each other nervously. "We killed them," General Ta said finally. His words fell like stones in the silent room. "Starting with our war god." Gasps came from the coalition representatives. The deity Kralvex grew suddenly larger, its fiery eyes blazing with fury or fear. It was hard to tell which. "Impossible." The war deity's voice boomed in everyone's heads. "Mortals cannot kill gods." "Yet we did," General Tay replied calmly. "It was necessary." "You must explain," Ambassador Gall said, his voice shaking slightly. "How? Why would you do such a thing?" Dr. Yun looked at the shocked faces around her. "It's a long story. It started about 10,000 years ago, when humanity was young." She walked to a display screen and pulled up ancient cave paintings. They showed strange, glowing figures standing among humans. Some of the figures had multiple arms or animal heads, or were made of fire or water. "These aren't just art," she explained. "They're historical records. Our gods were real beings who directly controlled human development. The war god was especially powerful." "And you killed it?" asked Gall. "Because it was too soft." "What does that mean?" General Tay's face grew dark. "It means exactly what I said. Our war god had rules for war. Honor, fairness, proper rituals before battle." He laughed without humor. "Softness. But those are the foundations of proper warfare," protested the reptilian alien. "Perhaps for you," said General Ta. "Humans learned a different lesson. We learned that in war, there is only winning or dying, and we chose to win." Dr. Yun touched another button on her display. New images appeared, ancient drawings showing humans fighting against the glowing figures, using strange weapons. "Our ancestors made a choice," she said quietly. "They chose freedom over divine guidance. They chose to fight their own battles, their own way." Kralvex moved closer to General Tai, looming over him. "And which way is that, human?" General Ta looked directly into the deity's burning eyes without flinching. "By any means necessary," he said. The meeting room fell silent after General Ta's words. Even the human leaders looked uncomfortable. The alien deities had moved closer to their mortal companions, as if needing protection. Dr. Yun cleared her throat. "Perhaps I should explain our history in more detail," she said. She walked to the center of the room. The lights dimmed, and a timeline appeared on the wall behind her. 10,000 years ago, these beings, what you call patron deities, directly controlled human affairs. They demanded worship, sacrifice, and total obedience. Images appeared showing ancient temples and rituals. Each god had a role: gods of harvest, gods of rivers, gods of childbirth. But the most powerful was always the war god. She paused. Because war feeds gods more than anything else. Kralvex made a sound like thunder in their minds. War is glorious. It is the highest form of existence. For you, perhaps, Dr. Yun said calmly. But our war god had a disturbing view of war. While your god seemed to focus on honor and glory in battle, ours believed that war should be total, complete destruction, no mercy for enemies. She showed images of ancient battles, brutal, bloody affairs. Our war god taught humans to burn enemy villages, to kill not just warriors but everyone, to use fear as a weapon. Ambassador Gall looked shocked. That is not proper warfare. War has rules, boundaries. Exactly, said General Ta. And that's where things began to change. Because while our war god wanted brutality in battle, it also demanded strict rules. Proper sacrifices before fighting. Looking your enemy in the eye as you killed them. Never attacking at night or from behind. Dr. Yun nodded. As humans advanced, we began to see a problem with this thinking. If the purpose of war is to win, why should there be any rules at all? New images appeared, showing the development of bows and arrows, then early guns, then tanks and planes. Humans created new weapons, ways to kill from far away, ways to fight without seeing the enemy's face. Our war god objected. It called these methods dishonorable. Because they are, Kralvex roared in their minds. Betidul should be face to face, warrior against warrior. But why? Asked Dr. Yun. If your family is threatened, if your home is at risk, why fight with one hand tied behind your back? Our ancestors began to ask these questions. General Ta stepped forward. We discovered that our war god didn't want better ways to fight. It wanted wars to last longer, to be bloodier. It fed on the conflict, the suffering. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. Our war god tried to limit human innovation, Dr. Yun continued. It punished those who created new weapons or tactics, but humans continued to develop them in secret. She showed more images, ancient laboratories, hidden workshops. The relationship grew strained. The war god demanded we follow its rules. Humans began to question why we needed divine guidance at all. General Tay's face grew dark. Then came the Great War, 3,000 years ago. A conflict that spread across all of Earth. Millions were dying following the war god's approved tactics. The fighting had lasted for decades with no end in sight. Dr. Yun touched her display. A new image appeared, a strange device with crystals and metal parts. A group of scientists and magic users created this weapon in secret. It could target the energy signature of divine beings. The alien deities moved back, as if the image itself was dangerous. Our ancestors faced a choice, General Ta said. Continue fighting the way the war god demanded, or find a new path. Dr. Yun looked at the frightened aliens. They chose freedom. They used the weapon first against the war god, then against the others who tried to punish humanity. And something unexpected happened, General Tai added. Without divine restrictions, humans ended the war quickly. We discovered we were better at warfare without godly guidance, more innovative, more practical, more willing to do whatever was necessary to win and then make peace. That is when humans truly began to advance, Dr. Yun said. When we took control of our own destiny. Ambassador Gall looked pale. You killed your gods to win a war. No, General Ta said, looking directly at Kralvex. We killed them because they were holding us back. The room was quiet after General Ta's words. Even the human leaders seemed lost in thought, remembering stories passed down through generations. General Ta walked to the center of the room. His uniform was simple, but his eyes held the wisdom of someone who understood war too well. "Let me tell you exactly how it happened," he said. "The final break with our war god." The display behind him changed to show ancient cities burning, people running in fear, armies clashing with primitive weapons. 3,000 years ago, Earth was burning. A war had spread across all continents. Millions were dead. The war god moved among human armies, demanding they fight in the proper way. He pointed to an image of a glowing figure standing among human soldiers, its shape similar to Kralvex, but somehow crueler. It wanted us to fight in open fields, to march in straight lines toward the enemy, to look into their eyes when we killed them, to fight only during daylight hours. Honorable combat, Kralvex approved, its voice like thunder in their minds. Honorable, perhaps, but effective. General Ta shook his head. People were starving. Cities were destroyed. And for what? Glory. Honor. The war had lasted for 30 years with no end in sight. Dr. Yun stepped forward. A group of scholars and soldiers began meeting in secret. They studied the gods, learning about their true nature. The display showed people huddled in underground rooms, working on strange devices. They discovered that divine beings were made of a special kind of energy that could be targeted, disrupted. One of these scholars lost her entire family in a battle. General Ta continued. A battle that could have been won quickly with a surprise night attack. But the war god forbade it, demanded they wait until morning. By then, reinforcements had arrived. Everyone died. The aliens shifted uncomfortably. This scholar created the first god-killing weapon. It was simple but effective. It disrupted the energy pattern that made up divine beings. The display showed a metal device with crystal components. Human leaders faced a choice. General Ta said, "Continue following the war god's rules, or take control of their own fate." His voice grew softer. They chose humanity. They used the weapon first against the war god itself. The display showed the device activating, sending out waves of energy. A glowing figure writhing in pain, breaking apart. The other gods attacked in revenge. But now, humans knew they could fight back. More weapons were built. More gods fell. Within a year, Earth was free of divine influence. Dr. Yun touched the display, changing it to show rebuilding cities and new technology. Without the gods restricting human development, we advanced quickly. We fought our wars differently, not for glory or honor, but to end conflicts as swiftly as possible. General Ta looked directly at Kralvex. We learned something about ourselves. We were better at war without divine guidance. More innovative, more adaptable. He paused, more willing to do what was necessary to win, and then make peace. Ambassador Gaul looked troubled. But without divine guidance, how do you know when war is justified? How do you prevent unnecessary conflict? We decide for ourselves, General Ta said simply. We make our own rules. Sometimes we fail, but they are our failures, not ones forced on us by beings who feed on our suffering. The reptilian alien hissed softly. You speak of the gods as parasites. Dr. Yun nodded. Because that's what we discovered they were, especially the gods of war. They didn't want conflicts to end. They wanted them to continue forever, generating the energy they fed upon. General Ta's face hardened. Your war god doesn't want victory. It wants eternal, glorious battle. But humans want peace. That was the final breaking point. He looked at each alien in turn. Our war god wasn't too harsh. It was too soft to let us win completely. Too soft to let us end wars quickly and decisively. Too soft to allow us the freedom to fight our own way. Ambassador Gaul looked at his deity companions with new eyes. For the first time, doubt showed on his face. Is this true? He asked Kralvex directly. The massive war deity said nothing, but its burning eyes narrowed with rage, or perhaps fear. News of the humans' history spread quickly through the coalition fleet. The alien deities grew agitated, their smoky forms swirling faster, growing larger. They demanded that humans be excluded from the alliance. But not everyone agreed. 3 days after the meeting, Colonel Jin of the coalition military requested a private meeting with Captain Jun and Hannah. They met in a small room aboard the human ship. Colonel Jin was from a species that looked almost like humans, except for his silver eyes and pale blue skin. His uniform showed many medals and honors. "What I am about to ask is dangerous," Jin said, looking over his shoulder as if worried about being overheard. "But I must know. Is it true that humans fight wars without divine guidance?" Jun nodded. "We have fought our own battles for 3,000 years. "And you win them?" Jin asked, leaning forward. "Not always," Hannah admitted. "But we fight on our terms. We don't glorify war. We see it as a failure of diplomacy, a last resort. But when we commit to it, we commit fully." Jin's silver eyes looked troubled. "The coalition has been at war with another alliance called the Dominion for over 600 years. 600 years? Jun was shocked. "How is that possible?" Jin's voice grew bitter. "Our war gods enforce strict battle protocols. We fight in designated zones at designated times. We use approved weapons and tactics. The Dominion follows the same rules, guided by their own war gods." He showed them a display of a typical battle. Soldiers lined up in perfect formations, marching toward each other while war gods floated above. "Millions die each year," Jin said quietly. "But nothing changes. No territory is truly won or lost. The front lines have barely moved in centuries." Hannah and Jun exchanged troubled glances. "Your gods don't want the war to end," Hannah said gently. Jin looked down. "Some of us have begun to suspect this, but to speak such thoughts openly is forbidden. The gods would punish such heresy." "What do you want from us?" Jun asked. "Knowledge," Jin said. "How do you fight? How do you win? How do you make peace?" He hesitated. "And is it possible the device you created still exists?" Before Jun could answer, an alarm sounded. Jin's communication device lit up. "We're being called back to the flagship," Jin said, standing quickly. "The Council of Deities has reached a decision about humanity." They rushed to the main coalition ship. In the grand meeting chamber, all 7 alien species had gathered with their gods. The deities had grown to massive size, their forms more solid than before. Ambassador Gaul stood at the center, looking uncomfortable. "The Council of Deities has decided that humanity is dangerous. You will be quarantined in your home system until you accept divine guidance once more." Kralvex floated forward, now twice as large as before. "Humans are abo men and ions. They aavc ommitkt ultimate sinin. They must be contained." Captain Jum stepped forward. "We came in peace. We have shared our history honestly. We wish friendship with the coalition, but we will not accept gods again." "The decision is final," Gaul said, not meeting Jun's eyes. "You have 3 days to return to Earth. After that, the coalition will establish a blockade around your solar system." As they left the chamber, Hannah noticed something strange. Many of the coalition soldiers and officers were watching the humans with interest, not fear. Some even nodded slightly as they passed. Back on their ship, Jun called Earth. General Ta listened to the news with a calm face. "We expected this," he said. "The gods would never accept us as equals." "What do we do now?" Hannah asked. General Ta smiled for the first time. "We wait. We have planted a seed of doubt in the minds of the coalition people. Now we watch it grow." "And if they attack?" Jun asked. "Then we show them why humans don't need a god of war to defend ourselves," General Ta said, his voice hard as steel. "We show them that freedom is worth fighting for." As they ended the call, Hannah noticed a small message on her screen. It was from Colonel Jin. "Not all of us stand with the gods. Some of us want to learn your ways. Be ready." Jun read the message over her shoulder and nodded. "It begins. he said quietly. The human ship prepared to leave Coalition space. Captain June stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main view screen. "Message from Colonel Jin," said Hana, looking at her screen. "Marked urgent." June nodded. "Put it through." Jin's face appeared on the screen. He looked worried. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "The Dominion has launched a surprise attack. They've taken Coalition representatives hostage, including Ambassador Gall. Several war gods were captured too." "How is that possible?" June asked. "Can gods be captured?" "Special containment fields," Jin explained quickly. "The Dominion has been developing them in secret. It's against all war protocols. The Coalition forces are in chaos." "What do you want us to do?" June asked. Jin looked over his shoulder nervously. "Our remaining war gods refuse to attack until proper rituals are performed. They say responding to a dishonorable attack with an equally dishonorable counterattack would break cosmic law." He paused. "It will take 3 days to complete the rituals. By then, the hostages might be dead." Hana looked at June. "They need our help." June thought for a moment. "Where are the hostages being held?" "A small Dominion ship near the 4th moon of Velos," Jin replied. "Heavily guarded." "We're on our way," Jun said. "Send us all the information you have." Jin nodded. "I'll meet you there. Bring your best people. And," he hesitated, "if you have any of those special weapons your ancestors created." The screen went dark. "Are we really doing this?" asked Sung, the ship's security chief. She was tall and strong, with short black hair and quick eyes. "Yes," said June, "but not for the gods. For the people they're putting at risk with their rules." Dai, the tactical officer, looked up from his console. "I studied the data Colonel Jin sent. The Dominion ship has strong shields and many weapons. A direct attack would fail." "Then we won't attack directly," Jun said. "We'll do this the human way." 6 hours later, a small team gathered in the launch bay. Captain Jun, Security Chief Sung, and Tactical Officer Dai prepared to board a shuttle. "Our plan is simple," Jun told them. "We avoid detection, board quietly, find the hostages, and get out. No grand battles, no honorable combat," added Sung with a smile. "Just get the job done." Day held up a small metal case. "Research sent these, based on the ancient designs, but smaller. They disrupt divine energy patterns. Should work on the Dominion war gods if needed." The shuttle launched quietly, its engines barely visible in the darkness of space. They approached Velos from behind its 4th moon, staying out of the Dominion ship's sensor range. "Look," whispered Da, pointing out the window. A Coalition military ship was hiding in the same spot. Colonel Jin stepped out to meet them. "I'm glad you came," Jin said. "I brought a few officers who think like me. The rest of the fleet is still preparing for proper combat under the gods' guidance." "What's the situation?" asked Jun. "The hostages are held in the central section," Jin explained, showing them a map. "The Dominion war god Malgrath is guarding them personally." "And your plan was?" Sung asked. Jin looked embarrassed. "Our war gods demand we attack from the front, announce our presence, and challenge Malgrath to honorable combat." "Which would get the hostages killed," Dai said. Jin nodded. "We need another way." "We have one," Jun said. He laid out his plan. Jin and his officers looked shocked. "Fight at night. Use deception. Target their power systems instead of facing warriors directly." Jin shook his head. "These are forbidden tactics." "They're effective tactics," Sung corrected. "The question is, do you want to win, or do you want to follow rules that guarantee failure?" Jin looked at his fellow officers. Slowly, they all nodded. "Show us your way," Jin said. As they prepared to move, Jun noticed the Coalition officers kept looking nervously over their shoulders. "What's wrong?" he asked. "The gods," Jin whispered. "If they discover what we're planning." You've lived under them too long, Jun said. Remember, they need you more than you need them. Jin took a deep breath and straightened his shoulders. You're right. Let's begin. Sung smiled as she checked her weapons. Time to show the galaxy how humans fight. The small team moved through space in complete silence. Their shuttle's engines were off. They floated toward the Dominion ship using only small gas bursts for direction. No signals, no lights, Jun whispered, though in space no one could hear them. We approach like shadows. The coalition officers looked nervous but followed every instruction. They had never fought this way before. Some pointed to the back of the Dominion ship. There, the waste disposal hatch. It's the least guarded entry point. Day checked his scanner. 2 guards only. And they're bored, not expecting any trouble from this direction. Because no honorable warrior would enter through garbage, Jin said with new understanding in his voice. Jun nodded. Exactly. Remember, we're not here to be honorable. We're here to succeed. They reached the hatch. Some pulled out a small device and attached it to the lock. In seconds, the door opened silently. How did you do that? Jin asked, amazed. We studied your technology, Sung said with a smile. While your gods were busy making rules, we were busy learning. Inside the ship, they moved carefully. Day's scanner showed them where to go and when to hide. Twice they froze in shadows as Dominion soldiers walked past, never seeing the rescue team. The hostages are in the next section, Dai whispered. But Malgrath is there too. Jin looked afraid. The Dominion war god. We cannot defeat a deity. Jun opened the small metal case Dai had brought. Inside were 5 devices that looked like small silver discs. These disrupt divine energy patterns, he explained, handing one to each team member. They won't kill a god, but they will weaken it enough for us to get past. The coalition officers stared at the devices in wonder and fear. This is the weapon your ancestors used, Jin asked. A much smaller version, Jun said, designed to stun, not destroy. They reached the door to the hostage room. Through a small window, they could see Ambassador Gall and other coalition representatives tied up. Floating nearby was a massive being made of red smoke and fire, Malgrath, the Dominion war god. There are 4 guards, Sun whispered, and the god. We need a distraction. Jun pulled out another device. This will shut down their power for 30 seconds. When it goes dark, we move in. Sung and I will take the guards. Day, you handle the god. Jin and your team, free the hostages. The god will expect honorable combat, Jin warned. A direct challenge. Then it will be surprised, Jun said simply. He activated the device. Instantly, the lights went out. They burst through the door. In the darkness, some moved like water, taking down 2 guards before they could even shout. Jun disabled the other 2 with quick, efficient strikes. Malgrath roared in anger, its fiery form lighting up the room. Who dares? Show yourself, coward. Instead of answering, Dai threw his energy disruptor. It hit the deity and activated with a sharp buzz. Malgrath screamed as its form wavered and shrank. Jin and his team rushed to the hostages, cutting their bonds. What is happening? Ambassador Gall asked, confused by the darkness and noise. Humans, Jin told him. They fight differently. The power came back on. The guards were unconscious. Malgrath was half its normal size, its fiery form flickering weakly. Impossible, the god hissed. This is not how Bat is done. That's why we won, Jun said, helping the last hostage up. They moved quickly back to their entry point, taking a different route to avoid patrols. Within 20 minutes, they were safely away on their shuttle. As they returned to the coalition ship, Ambassador Gall approached Jun. You saved us, he said, sounding surprised. But you fought without honor. We fought without glory. Sung corrected. There's a difference. Jin nodded. They didn't waste lives in pointless displays of courage. They didn't follow rules that only helped the enemy. They simply accomplished the mission. But is that not wrong? Gaul asked, looking at his own deity companions who had been in hiding during the rescue. Is it wrong to save lives? June asked. Is it wrong to end conflicts quickly instead of dragging them out for centuries? Gaul had no answer, but many of the coalition officers were looking at the humans with new respect, and at their own gods with new questions in their eyes. News of the rescue spread quickly through the coalition fleet. The war gods were furious. They demanded that all contact with humans end immediately. Kralvex, the coalition's primary war god, grew to an enormous size, its weapons glowing with dangerous energy. The humans must be punited. It boomed in everyone's minds. They have repeated our warriors with decision or ability tactics. But something unexpected was happening. Many coalition soldiers and officers were talking quietly among themselves. They had seen how quickly and efficiently the humans had completed a mission that would have cost many lives using traditional methods. Colonel Jin had become a quiet leader of this growing movement. He arranged a secret meeting between several high-ranking coalition officials and the humans. Dr. Yun and General Tai arrived from Earth to join Captain Jun and his team. They gathered in a secure room deep inside a coalition military base. "We need to know the whole truth," said a coalition admiral, an old reptilian with battle scars across his face. "About the gods. About why you really killed them." Dr. Yun nodded slowly. "It's time to share everything." She activated a display showing ancient human documents and images. "We didn't just kill our war god because it limited our tactics," she explained. "We killed it because we discovered what the gods truly are." The room was completely silent as she continued. "They are energy beings who feed on specific emotions and actions. Harvest gods feed on the energy of growth and abundance. Knowledge gods feed on discovery and learning." She paused. "And war gods feed on conflict and death. Not just any conflict. They prefer long, drawn-out wars with maximum suffering and minimal progress." General Ta stepped forward. "We studied our war god for years before acting. We discovered it was actively preventing quick victories. It punished generals who ended battles too quickly. It rewarded those who extended conflicts for years." "That can't be true," said a coalition general, though doubt showed in his eyes. "Look at your own history," Jung suggested. "You've been at war with the Dominion for 600 years. Has either side made real progress, or do you fight the same battles over and over, with millions dying each year?" The coalition officers looked at each other uneasily. "The longer a species worships war gods," Dr. Yun said, "the longer their conflicts last, the less their military strategy evolves. Compare our history to yours." She showed two timelines side by side. Human wars were intense but relatively short, with long periods of peace between them. Coalition conflicts lasted centuries with no resolution. "Your gods don't want victory," General Ta said gently. "They want eternal, ritualized conflict that feeds them." One of the coalition officers stood up angrily. "These are lies. The gods protect us, guide us. Then why did your war gods refuse to act when your people were in danger?" Sung asked. "Why did they insist on rituals that would have let the hostages die?" The officer had no answer. Day opened his tablet and showed them data he had collected. "We scanned the energy patterns of your deities during the crisis. Their power actually increased while they were forcing you to wait. They grew stronger while your people were in danger." Dr. Yun looked at each coalition officer. "You don't have to believe us. Study them yourselves. Watch their actions. Measure their energy patterns during peace versus during conflict." The meeting lasted for hours. By the end, many coalition officers were asking for more information, for ways to verify what the humans had told them. As they left, Admiral Kang, the oldest of the coalition officers, stopped General Ta. "If what you say is true," he said quietly, "what happens to a species that rejects their gods?" General Ta smiled. They become truly free. They take responsibility for their own actions, the good and the bad. They make their own choices. And if we wanted to, follow your path, the Admiral asked. General Tai handed him a small data device. Everything we know about the gods is here, including the design for the weapon we used. The choice is yours. That night, for the first time in coalition history, some officers did not perform their evening prayers to their war gods. And the gods noticed. A great debate spread across the coalition. Many remained loyal to their gods, but others began to question everything they had been taught. Colonel Jin became the leader of this growing movement. They called themselves the Free Thinkers. The war gods were furious. They grew larger and more threatening each day. Kralvex, once a majestic figure, now looked monstrous as its form twisted with rage. Those who qistio and the aid gods will be punished. Its voice thundered throughout the coalition fleet. The humans have poisoned your mind is with lies. The coalition council called an emergency meeting. They would vote on whether to accept humanity into their alliance or banish them forever. Representatives from all 7 species gathered, their patron deities hovering behind them. As Captain Jun, Hana, Dr. Yun, and General Tai entered the meeting hall, they could feel the tension. Half the room looked at them with hatred, the other half with hope. Ambassador Gall, who had been rescued by the humans, stood to speak. We cannot deny that the humans saved many lives using methods our traditions forbid. But traditions exist for a reason. The gods have guided us for thousands of years. The debate continued for hours. Then a messenger burst into the room. The Dominion fleet has been spotted. They've launched a massive attack against our outer colonies. The war gods moved forward, their forms glowing with excitement. Now we shall have a proper battle, Kralvex announced. All warriors will follow the sacred combat protocols. But then something strange happened. The gods seemed to hesitate. Their forms flickered briefly, as if they were afraid. Colonel Jin stood up. The Dominion is attacking civilian targets. There's no time for rituals or protocols. We must act now. Patience, Kralvex commanded. Proper preparation must be made. Jin looked at the human delegation, then back at his fellow officers. How many more must die while we wait? How many more centuries must this war continue? He stepped forward, addressing the entire council. I choose a different path. I choose to fight to win, not to feed the gods. A group of officers stood with him. Admiral Kang, the old reptilian, joined them. I have served in this war for 300 years, he said. My father fought in it. His father before him. Enough. General Todd watched with pride as nearly half the coalition military stood with Jin. Kralvex and the other war gods grew enormous, their forms darkening with rage. This is HFY, Kralvex roared. You cannot fight without our blessing. Watch us, Jin said simply. The coalition fleet split in two. Those following Jin adopted human tactics, swift, coordinated strikes targeting the Dominion's command centers and supply lines, rather than engaging in ritualized frontline battles. The battle was over in hours, not the weeks or months that coalition conflicts usually lasted. Jin's forces achieved what centuries of war had not, a decisive victory that forced the Dominion to retreat. In the aftermath, more coalition citizens began to question their gods. Some deities fled to find more obedient followers. Others tried to adapt, claiming they had always supported progress. Jun, Hana, Dr. Yun, and General Todd watched from the observation deck as a new treaty was signed between humanity and the coalition. Will they kill their gods like we did? Hana asked. Perhaps, Dr. Yun replied. Or perhaps they'll find a different path. The important thing is they now have a choice. General Todd nodded thoughtfully. That's the real reason we killed our war god. not because it was too harsh, but because it was too soft to let us make our own decisions about something as important as war and peace. Jin joined them on the deck. The coalition officer looked different now, more confident, standing taller. "We have much to learn from each other," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of friendship that he had studied. As coalition ships practiced new formations and tactics, Jun watched with satisfaction. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't that we're good at war," he said. "It's that we refuse to worship it." Jin looked out at the stars. "The gods asked why humans don't have a war god," he said. "Now I understand. You killed yours not because it was too violent, but because it was too soft to let you truly achieve peace." General Ta smiled. "And now the galaxy knows it too." The end.